How great are you, Lord? You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. Sing with us. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. We'll shout your praise, our hearts will cry, these bones will sing, great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise, our hearts will cry, these bones will sing, great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You know, I think it's really easy to pour out our praise when everything's going great in our lives. But the real test is, what are we going to do when things go wrong? What are we going to do when things fall apart? When we get that dreaded phone call? When our health fails us? When we lose a loved one? Are we still going to praise him? Are we still going to thank him? Are we still going to live for him? That's really what it's all about. Doesn't mean that it's easy. Sometimes it's the hardest thing we've ever done. But if we'll just still praise him and still just depend on him for everything, he will help us through. I shared last night that my mom passed away in June after a 15-year battle with Alzheimer's. probably the hardest thing we've ever been through. And there were times where I literally felt like I couldn't breathe. Just the pain, but also the anxiety. As someone who wants to help, and I couldn't help, I couldn't fix, I couldn't change, I couldn't control a thing in that whole journey. But God was there. And I'm so thankful that when we need him, and when we feel like we can't even breathe, he gives us our breath. He gives us our strength. And he gives us hope. There's always hope, even in the midst of our pain. Because the same God of the Bible, all the stories in the Bible, where he was so faithful, is the same God who will be faithful to you and me today. We need him, ladies. But he is our everything. We did this song last night, and it's one of my favorites because, like I said, it carried me through this summer. But I hope it can be an encouragement to you wherever you're at, if you're going through a hard time, or maybe things are great, and it's just an encouraging reminder that God is faithful, and he will never change. I'm calling on the God of Jacob, whose love endures through generations. I know that you will keep your covenant. I'm calling on the God of Moses, the one who opened up the ocean. I need you now to do the same thing for me. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness.
I'm calling on the God of Mary, whose favor rests upon the lowly. I know with you all things are possible. I'm calling on the God of David, who made a shepherd boy courageous. I may not face Goliath, but I've got my own giants. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness. You heard your children, you hear your children now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You answered prayers back then, and you will answer now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You were providing then. You are providing now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You moved in power then. God, move in power now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You are a healer then. You
I love that line. I am standing on your faithfulness. We can stand on God's faithfulness. Even when we feel like we're falling and slipping all over the place, we can stand in him. So I told you we would start this session off because you guys asked a question. How do I know God's plan and his purpose for my life? So since you asked, I'm glad that I can spend some time diving into that for a few moments this morning. You know, the first thing that we can do is start where we're at, right where we're at. The fact that you're here this morning is a great starting place. You didn't have to come. Nobody forced you. But something within you made that decision to come, to hear from God, to allow him to speak and lead you and direct you. Start where you're at. You might think, well, you know, if God has a dream or a purpose and a plan, then I've got to figure it out and I've got to just start today. What is something you could do today to share Jesus with somebody around you, to point people to him? It's just, like I said, finding ways to make ourselves available for God to use us. That's what a dream is all about. Try new things. You know, so many times we get in a rut. I know with me, sometimes I'm not a real big person that likes change. Anybody else like that? Like, how many here like change? Raise your hand. Okay, there are a few. How many don't like change? Raise your hand. Okay, so I have friends, really, seriously, where, you know, they kind of get bored and they'll literally start painting rooms in their house or moving furniture around and changing everything up every week. And I mean, just the thought of that practically sends me in hives. I mean, once I get my house set up, I mean, it's good. It's good till we move, till Jesus comes, till I pass away. You know, we're good. I don't need to keep changing. If it's right in the first place, why mess with it? And you know, and then there's my hair. That's the other thing. I could wear the same hairstyle until Jesus comes. But and if you look at my album covers, you can kind of see that because some of them are very similar. But the ones where my hair's a little different, it's because my hairstylist will say, Paula, you've had this same one for about 10 years now. It's time to change. And I'm like, okay. But you know, if we're not careful, ladies, we can do the same thing with our lives. We can get so comfortable right where we are that we don't want to step out and try anything different. And we can miss out on the exciting things that God has right in front of us if we just dare to step out, to try something new, and to welcome change in our lives. I know for me, I have seen in my own life instances where God has pushed me out of my comfort zones, and it ends up being the most exciting thing and becomes a part of my life that I continue. I shared about the women's opportunity to speak for women's events, and that was terrifying to me. But once God opened that door, and once I went ahead and I began to see how God could use that, it's exciting. And now they can't shut me up. Now I do probably as much speaking as I do singing. And that's become a passion of my heart. But it would have never happened if I had said, oh, no, I don't speak. I just sing. And I can't do that. No, within myself, I couldn't. But that's the thing. When we step out and say, okay, Lord, I have no idea what I'm doing, but you've obviously opened up this opportunity. So I'm going to follow you through it and allow you to use me. See the difference when we just say, okay, God, I will be willing and available to whatever you have for me to do. I remember when I wrote my book. First of all, you have to know, I am not that person that just started as a child saying they were going to be an author and write a book. In fact, I was very reluctant. And I would always say, yeah, and people would say, but Paula, your story, people need to hear your story. And I always thought in the back of my mind, well, someday I'll do that, but it's going to be like way down the road. not now. And part of it too was my perfectionism. I just knew that I would probably shut the whole thing down before I even got started because, the first few things I typed out wouldn't be perfect. So, we just can't do this. It's just too much. And so I just never really thought that that would be something that I would do. But at one point, I went to a women's conference, and it was really at a point where one of those times when taking care of my mom and taking care of a little one at home, and I felt empty. I needed to go and just be filled up. So I went to this conference really with that desire, just, Lord, meet me here. I just need some encouragement. I've got ministry things coming up, and again, I feel like I have nothing left to give. So God, I want so much to hear from you. So in my mind, I pictured just this incredible weekend of worship. I pictured myself just writing all these notes and just, being just so encouraged and excited. And that all did happen too. But it ended up, this conference, it was for people who speak and write and, have a women's ministry kind of a thing. So I went just, like I said, hoping to receive. But one thing they did was you kind of had, when you signed up, you were supposed to pick a track that you were going to go down with speaking and writing. And I just was like, well, the speaking thing will be great because, we all can use some pointers and things to help us become better. But the writing thing wasn't something I was going after, but they made you meet with a publisher. And I was like, well, I'm not really writing anything at this point. And they said, that's okay. We still have a publisher for you to meet with. And here's a list. You get to pick which one. Well, all of these publishers wanted you to come with at least 50 pages written towards your book. Well, I'm like, I'm not writing a book. So there was one publisher that didn't require anything, and she'd sit down with you, and I said, well, I'll just put her down. Well, the week before the conference started, I get a phone call from the people sponsoring it saying, yeah, the lady that you signed up with has had to back out of the conference. So we've put you with this other person, and this other person was one of the real hard-nosed people, at least it seemed that way. And, she wanted, the first 3 chapters of your book. I'm like, oh, my word, what am I going to tell this lady? I'm not writing a book. So I just was like, okay, whatever. So I get there, I go to the conference, I meet with this publisher, and I just remember walking in, and everybody else had, like, briefcases and, all their papers and all their things. And I had my pink purse with me. And I came bopping in, and I saw her looking at me like, where's your manuscript? And I just came in and sat down, and she asked me if I had it. And I said, yeah, that's the thing. I'm not really writing a book right now. And I just remember her looking at me, then what are you even doing here? Was what she was thinking, I'm sure of it. So somehow she just decided, and I could tell she was not really impressed with the whole thing. And I was feeling like, oh, I shouldn't even be here. So then she says to me, well, just go ahead, I guess, and tell me your story. Do you have a story? I said, well, yeah, I have a testimony. And I went ahead and shared it with her. And at the end, she goes, well, when you get that written, make sure you send it to me. And I just remember walking out of there thinking, well, I hope she's still around in 20 or 30 years because that's probably when I'm going to write it because I'm not writing a book right now with everything else that's going on. And as the weekend went on, I just felt God, that still small voice saying, Paula, write the book, write the book. I'm like, Lord, I'm not an author, write the book. And so I got in my car to drive home when the weekend was over. And about halfway through, I just said, okay, enough already. I'll write the book. I don't even know how to do this, but I'll do it. So I went home, and it was the end of July, and I said, but I am going to wait till Emma gets back in school because it was just too much. And I said, I'll step down from every responsibility I have there in town, and I'll just focus on writing this book I was just sure was going to take months to do. So I'll never forget, Emma went to school that first day of school, not kindergarten, but whatever year that was. And I went home, and I sat down in front of the computer, and I literally looked up. I said, okay, Lord, I can't do this, but if this is what you want me to do, you're going to have to help me do this. And ladies, all I can say is I am in complete awe of how God shows up and will write the story of our life when we step aside and allow him to. The book was written in 3 weeks' time. It just came out like ferociously. I didn't even know. It was unbelievable. I had never experienced anything like that before. I sent it in, and within a week later, she called back and said, yes, we are on board. We are going to do this. And I remember feeling kind of sick to my stomach because I was like, oh, I don't know about this. You know, it's one thing to speak, but when you write it, it's permanent. Like, it's in writing, like everything. And I'm just like, I don't know about all this. This is kind of scary. I mean, just to put it bluntly, you might as well stand in your driveway naked. That's really how I felt, because there you are in front of the world. And so I sent it away. They did the editing. They produced it, and then they shipped it out. And I just remember the day this big Mack truck comes down our neighborhood, pulls up to our house, 10,000 books. I felt so bad for Rob. It was the coldest day, bitter cold. And he had to get all the books into our basement, and he had his little four-wheeler and a trailer, and it was so cold. And I'm standing there just looking at this whole thing going, I can't even believe this is happening. So he gets it all in the house, and he comes in the kitchen, and he's like, aren't you excited? I said, no, I'm not really excited. I feel like I could throw up right now. He's like, what is wrong with you? He said, people live for this. Like, this is exciting. It's your book. I'm like, I know, that's the problem. It's a book. People are going to read it. He's like, isn't that the point of a book? And so we had this big talk, and I just was like, just still struggling with the whole thing because it was 100% out of my comfort zone. So then he had a book release party for me and invited all of our neighbors. Now, here's what you have to know. Most of our neighbors are unsaved. I know we live in the Bible Belt, but for whatever reason, our neighborhood has a lot of transient people that work at the hospital and some engineers in the area. And so we have Hindu families, Muslim families, atheist families. I mean, we have it all. And so, in fact, Christian families are the minority in our neighborhood. And I'll never forget it. I looked out in our living room. We had 75 people in our living room. And we gave them all a copy of the book to keep, and as a thank you for coming and celebrating that night with us. And all of a sudden, I stood there and I realized this had nothing to do with me and whether or not I was a writer or not a writer or a book or whatever. This was all about God showing up and wanting to do something in the lives of all these people that were here in our home, celebrating this milestone that I wasn't even sure I wanted, and celebrating what God had done in my life. Because when you read the book, it's all about God working in my life. And so it was so exciting, and all of a sudden, the feelings I was having kind of subsided and was replaced with excitement. Like, Lord, what are you going to do with this? It was funny. Just a couple days later, one of the Hindu ladies emailed me, and she said, Paula, I can't put this book down. How can I get my hands on more of these so I can give them out to my friends? And I said, oh, we'll give you some. How many do you need? And again, it was so exciting to see how God will show up and do a work that we don't even know or expect. But he will do it when we make ourselves available to him. But we have to step out. We have to try new things. We have to welcome change. I remember after my brother passed away, I flew back to Maine from the funeral here. And when I got back, I was just thinking about how 9 of his friends had accepted the Lord at the funeral and just how incredible that was. And I just got to thinking, people are searching. People need Jesus, and we have the answer. what are we doing with that? And I think sometimes we get scared. We think, oh, they'll make fun of us, or they'll get uncomfortable, and so we don't share, or we tone it all down. But I'm telling you, if you just share the gospel, people will hear about Jesus and God will do the work. So when I got home from that funeral, Rob and I were talking, and we had been a part of a Bible study with friends. And those are great. I'm not knocking that at all. But as we thought about it, we were like, you know what? Let's do something different. We have a lot of these neighbors that are unsaved in our neighborhood. We drive by them all the time. Let's start a Bible study and just invite them and see what happens. We didn't call it a book club. We didn't call it a dinner club. We didn't disguise it. We called it a Bible study. And, before we started, we thought, okay, there's a real chance it might just be Rob and I staring at each other, because they may not want to come to a Bible study, but you don't know unless you try. So Rob's job was to invite. He was the inviter. And you have to know Rob. He's a big kid. And in the neighborhood, the kids love him. Like, back a few years, like when Emma was little, we would have a whole yard full of kids playing kickball, and what were some of the games? Just so many. They would make up games, capture the flag, this weird, what is the one where the tree and the ball and the lower loop, what is that one you guys, lower loop tag, some game they played where they have to hit, yeah, she loves that game. She still plays it today. But literally the kids would come to the door and ring the doorbell and say, can Mr. Rob come out and play? They really would. So years of all this has earned him the right now to come up and say, hey, would you guys like to come to a Bible study? Because we know these families. We can tell you every single person in our neighborhood, their names, because we've lived with them. We've done life with them. We've played tag with them. We've, all the things. So I'll never forget it. One of the neighbors that we really like this family a lot, and we've been burdened for them. Rob asked him, hey, would you guys like to come to the Bible study? And he's like, oh. He said, we don't even have a Bible. And Rob's like, oh, that's no problem. We've got Bibles, and plus you can do the app on your phone. And then his next question was, well, what do I wear? And Rob's like, dude, what do you wear? You wear clothes. He's like, just whatever, shorts, pants. It's, and it was just funny because everybody has different thoughts of what things will be like. And he's like, we're just hanging out in the house, and we just want to talk about Jesus. So we started doing this, and I'm telling you what, we had as many as 32 neighbors that came, just excited. My job was, I was the baker. I love to bake, and it gave me an excuse to, hey, if you feed them, they'll come. And so I would make all these fun desserts, and they'd come early and have the desserts, and then we'd sit down, and we went through experiencing God. Just a study that we felt they would relate to, and it was incredible. And we began to see God work. The neighbor that didn't have a Bible, by the second week, he had downloaded the Bible app on his phone. This guy isn't even a believer, and now he's got the Bible on his phone, And we had some of the Hindu families come and check it out, and God did some exciting things, but we had to do something different. We could have kept doing the same thing every day, but God, and it was God, it wasn't us. God put that on our hearts. But that's what he'll do when we make ourselves available. So ask him, Lord, what can I do? No, he might not have you write a book, but maybe he'll have you reach out to your neighbors. Maybe you could bake some pumpkin bread and take it over and just have a conversation where you introduce yourself, tell them who you are, and you never know what God can do from there. So try new things. Let your mind go and think like a child. When we're children, we're not scared of anything. And then somehow we grow up and we're scared of everything. And somehow we need to get back to that. Just that confidence that, let's just do it. Let's try it and see what happens. I share this story quite a bit because it's kind of a funny story. But I remember when I was a child, I went to what was called Bangor Baptist at that time, and they had a big vacation Bible school program. And one year they had a contest. Whoever could bring the most visitors would win this 10-speed bike that was on the platform. Well, you have to know, I didn't have a bike. So I saw that bike, and I'm like, that's how God's going to provide a bike for me. So I'm going to go out and invite people to come, and I'm going to win that bike. So I went and started inviting everybody that I possibly could. And the rule was your parents couldn't do the inviting. You had to do that, but they could help with rides. So I went out and I invited everybody that looked young enough or old enough to go, and I took their names and phone numbers. And the night before Bible school started, I called all of them to follow up and to see who was coming and who would need rides and all of that. Well, to make a long story short, my family ended up having to get a school bus because I brought 72 kids to Bible school on the first day. And my husband's like, Paula, you're such an overachiever. Like, second place only had 5. You couldn't just bring 10 and call it good. You had to make sure nobody even came close. And then when I was in college, I don't know how they tracked me down, but the National Board of Vacation Bible School contacted me and told me I still hold the national record. So there you have it. But here's the thing, ladies. I believed back then, and I still believe today, that we have a big God who wants to do big things through each and every one of us. Not just 5-person things. He wants to do 72-person things in and through us when we step out and say, God, I believe. I know you can do anything. You can do the impossible. You can do the miraculous. So work through me today. And that's what he will do. But we have to get over our fears, rise above them, make ourselves available to him, and believe not only that he can, but that he will do it in and through each and every one of us. Another thing is we have to associate people with people who prod you, question you, and sharpen you. It's often been said you become like the people you hang around. And here's the thing. It's not that we snub people because, I don't want to. No, because there's people God puts in our lives for us to impact and influence. But as far as the people that we listen to and that we allow to speak into our lives, we need to make sure they're people who sharpen us, who encourage us, who cheer us on, and who help us along the way. You've got to have those kind of people in your circle as well. Another way to find out God's purpose and his plan, and this is kind of a basic one, but spend time with him. Make it your priority each day. We say we love him. What does our time spent with him say? If we want to know what he wants us to do in our lives, we've got to spend time seeking him, time in his word, time in prayer. The Bible's very clear that the Lord will direct our steps. Proverbs 16:9. Man plans his way, but God directs his steps. And I can tell you time after time in my own life where God has directed my steps when I have sought him, when I needed his direction in my life. I remember one time we were asked by a camp out on the West Coast if we would come and work at this camp. And Rob could be the director, and I could help with the kids counseling, and I could help with singing. And then we would have the weekends off to still fly out and do our ministry. And it was like the perfect scenario. And when they sat down and explained everything to us, and even financially what they were able to help us with was huge. And it really on paper was a no-brainer. But we prayed about it because we pray about everything. And we were just saying, Lord, if this is what you want, please make it very clear. Well, the more we prayed about it, the more we didn't have a peace, and it just didn't seem like what we needed to do. But it didn't make sense because it was this incredible opportunity. So we wrestled with it, and we went back and forth, but we kept bathing it in prayer and asking the Lord to direct our steps. Well, we ended up turning it down because we just did not have a peace about it. And reluctantly, we said, we are so sorry, but we're going to have to say no because we feel like God is closing the doors for us. But we want you to know how much we appreciate this, and we're so grateful that you would even consider us for this ministry opportunity. Well, it wasn't even a year later that sadly we heard that the camp had to close its doors unexpectedly. Some things happened, some finances fell apart, and they hit hard times and they could not survive it, and they had to close. And I just remember thanking the Lord for protecting us from packing everything up on the East Coast, trucking all across the country to the West Coast, getting all, comfortable there, only to have it close and shut down, and then be like, what now? What do we do now? And that's what the Lord will do when we seek him for every decision, when we seek him for his purpose and his plan for our life. But we have to do it seriously. It's not a half-hearted thing. It's where we get up every day and say, God, direct my steps. God, show me your will. Show me your plan. Show me the path that I need to take. He will. He'll open up opportunities, but he'll also close the doors where they need to be closed. So we're not running after things we shouldn't. Because here's the thing. My personality is I get very excited, and I'm a doer, and I'm a task-oriented person, and it's hard sometimes for me to say no, because I almost feel like everything should be a yes, and somehow I'll figure it out as I go. But the older I get, the more that I'm learning, we want to make sure it's God's plan, not Paula's plan, but God's plan, his purpose, his dreams, his future, because that's what's best for us anyway. He has our best at the heart of his plan. Why would we want anything different? But we can sometimes get in the way, and sometimes our own thoughts and desires and feelings can get clouding out maybe what God has. So that's why it is so important each day to spend that time with him, to get up every day and say, God, empty me of me and fill me with you. Fill me with your will, your plan, your purposes, so that I know the path that I need to take. And the last thing is, what do you enjoy? I think so many times we think God's going to make us do something we hate. Have you ever thought that maybe, just maybe, the one who created us actually factored into his plan our likes, our dislikes, our talents, our abilities, and made that part of his plan and purpose for us? What is it that you like and enjoy? And then find a way to do it for the Lord. I'll never forget when the camp asked me to stay for the summer and do the music. Oh, I was so excited. So I called back home and I said, well, they've asked me to do the music this summer. Can I stay and do it? And I'll never forget my mom. She's like, well, I'm going to have to pray about it, and we'll let you know tomorrow. Really? I'm like, okay. So I waited all day and all night, and I kept hoping, and she'd say yes. The Lord would say yes, and then she'd say yes. So the next morning, I called bright and early. So what did he say? And she said, well, we've decided you can go to camp, but we're going with you. So they packed up and they came down to New Hampshire. My mom became the cook, and my dad worked on maintenance. He fixed all the leaky toilets and all the little things they needed help with. My mom would get up every morning at 4:30, and she would head to the kitchen, and she would make homemade cinnamon rolls. She would make homemade blueberry muffins, pancakes, waffles, French toast, scrambled eggs, bacon, you name it, she made it. Then she'd clean up the breakfast and move right into lunch. And lunch was always from scratch, incredible meals and homemade chocolate chip cookies and all the things. Then she'd clean up after lunch and she'd go into dinner. And dinner was homemade spaghetti sauce and garlic bread and desserts. And she even did a luau every week down at the beach with all these foods and teriyaki chicken and kebabs. And I mean, these kids didn't want to go home. Like they were like, this is the best food we've ever had. And it was so incredible. But she would not leave the kitchen till like 9 at night. And then get up at 4:30 the next morning and do it all over again. But here's the thing. Every teenager that made a decision for Christ that summer and every summer following, she played a part in. Because she took something she enjoyed, something that she was good at, and she'd offered it up to the Lord and said, God, I'll do that. That's something I can do. I'll go work at camp and see these teens come to know Jesus. I was sharing in Portland, Oregon once, and I was talking about living out the dreams God has for you. And I'll never forget it. At the end of the weekend, there was a lady. She was in her 80s, and she came up and she said, all my life, I've had a dream of being involved in missions. And for different reasons, I never did. She said, but you know what? This weekend, God has spoken to my heart. She said, our church is taking a short-term missions trip to Eastern Europe. And you know what? I'm going to sign up and go. She said, I can pass out tracts and I can help the missionaries. And surely they have something that I can do. And I got so excited because that's what it's all about. Making ourselves available for God to use us and stepping out in obedience to follow him. Doesn't matter how young or how old we may be. God has a purpose. God has a plan. Here's your test to see whether God is finished with you or not today, okay? Here it is. If you're breathing, he's not done. So none of us are off the hook. He's got a plan for all of us here. So what are we doing to serve him? What are we doing to offer? What do you enjoy? There's a lady at my church in Virginia, and she's in her 80s. And you know what she does every week? She handwrites 20 cards and puts them in the mail to people who need encouragement. And you know what I have to tell you? My parents got one every week. And my mom would pick up that card. And she had Alzheimer's and didn't know this lady anymore. But you know what? She would look at that and stare at it and have a big smile on her face. And she'd put it down, and then a few minutes later, she'd pick it back up like it was the first time, and she'd look at it all over again. She'd smile all over again. And I saw firsthand how God used that woman who sat down with her pen and those cards, and she wrote out encouraging verses, and she put a stamp on them, and she put those in her mailbox. She can't even come to church anymore because physically she's not able, but she sits at home, and she does a ministry every single day. And I was so inspired by that. And it makes me want to get up every day and say, God, what can I do to encourage someone? How can you use me to make a difference? And that's what God will do when we just come as we are with whatever we have and say, God, use me. He will do that in ways that you never dreamed possible. So finding God's purpose and finding ways to make a difference is what it's all about. I could go on and on and on of just examples of how God can do this, but only you can figure out what God has for you because it's different for all of us. We all have different opportunities. We all have different abilities. What is it that God is saying to you today? Now, sometimes as we do this, there's some sacrifices we have to make along the way. I mean, I remember as a teenager when God was opening up the doors for me to start traveling and singing, I was gone just about every weekend. So there were many things I missed. I missed football games. Emma actually missed the big school football game this week. They had it, was it last night or, yeah. So while all her friends were at the football game, she was here singing and praising the Lord. And yeah, there are times where we have to give up things. But here's what I've learned. It pales into comparison. Anything we have to give up pales to the fulfillment that we find in living in the center of God's will and His plan for our lives. Another cost is continuous motivation and hard work that no one knows about often but us and our families. You know, nothing's handed us in life. We got to work hard. Motivation is the desire to get out of bed each morning. And for some of us, that's the hardest part. To take the next step toward our dream, to overcome the obstacles, and to be successful. It involves doing what needs to be done rather than what we want to do sometimes. I love what Winston Churchill says. He says, most significant contributions that have been made by society have been made by people who are tired. Can you relate to that? I mean, sometimes we're exhausted or we're busy. We feel like we're busy all the time. You want to get something done, give it to a busy person. That's the thing I've seen with my life. But you know what? Again, the Lord will give us what we need in these times. Another cost to living out our dream is the risk of standing alone. Throughout my life, with every milestone, if I can talk here, God has blessed me with, I've had to deal with negativity and jealousy from others along the way. People who maybe they themselves don't dare to dream, so they don't want anybody else to either. Have you ever known anybody like that? So they take it on themselves to shoot down your dream and to give you every reason why it won't work. I remember in college, I was singing on the singing groups, and the Lord was leading me to actually step out and to go back to traveling to churches and to leave the groups and to start doing my ministry again that He had started as a teenager. So I was so excited and just couldn't wait to share it with my friends and teammates and some of my professors who had been such an integral part of my life. And I just remember going to one of the professors and telling them what God was leading me to do. And I just remember their response was, well, Paula, that's great that you wanna sing and do a ministry, but singers are a dime a dozen. There's a lot of them out there, and it doesn't really pay the bills, and it's not really practical, and you'll probably have to find something more, practical that you can do, and it just probably won't work out. And I just remember standing there being so discouraged and disappointed, but then I remember kind of resolving in my heart that, you know what, I'm not going to let somebody else talk me out of what God has put on my heart. Now, yes, it's important to make sure in those moments to check everything again and make sure it's the Lord leading us and not us just chasing after some wild dream that isn't going to happen. But when we know that God has spoken something into our heart and we know it's what we're supposed to do, it doesn't matter what anybody says. God will bring it about. And that's what He did in my life. And what's funny now is some of those very same people are the ones that are like, oh, Paula, we're so proud of you. We knew you could do it. And I'm like, yeah, right. I remember what you said. But, that's what we have to do. We have to have tunnel vision where we tune out the negativity, tune out the naysayers. Again, it's not that we can never take constructive criticism or just some input from outside people. We should always listen and then offer it back to the Lord and say, God, is this you speaking or is it them speaking? And 9 times out of 10, sometimes, I shouldn't say that, but sometimes, often, I have found it's just people being negative, maybe being jealous, and just they're not doing anything, so they don't want anyone else to either. So don't let people discourage you from living out your dream that God has given you. I also remember that summer when I surrendered my life to the Lord. coming back from that camp, just so excited and eager to tell my friends because they were Christians too, and I just knew it would be so incredible. And I remember sharing about surrendering my life to the Lord with them, and some of them just being, yeah, that's great, Paula. And going from being, someone they wanted to hang around to being someone nobody really wanted to be around. And that was hard. And I thought, wow, Lord, what happened here? I thought that they would encourage me and support this. And the Lord showed me that in those times, God is what we need. When we feel alone, when we're standing alone, it's hard, but God is there. But here's the thing, and I share this often, especially with young people, and I see a few out here today, and I just want to speak this out here today to encourage you to not worry what other people think or say. And some of the very people that gave me the hardest time, like in my class and stuff, are the ones now. Some of them have struggled with alcohol, drugs. One's been in jail. Some of them have been through several divorces. And I look at where their life is today, not in judgment, but I look and see where I am today and the happiness and the joy that God has given me and blessed my life with. I wouldn't trade it for anything. When you put God first and you live for Him with everything that you have inside, He blesses you and fulfills you in such a way that nothing can compare. So I wouldn't trade it. So in those times when the world tries to pull us away or discourage us or make fun of us or ridicules us, we've all had times where somebody has given us a hard time for our faith. We just need to tune it out. And remember, we're not living for other people. We're living for God. And it only matters what He thinks. And as long as we're pleasing Him and seeking after Him, then we are exactly where we're supposed to be. Another thing that we can struggle with would be feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. This is an obstacle. We talked about having a purpose. We talked about there's a cost to it, but there's also some obstacles that we face. And as ladies, we can struggle with feeling insecure and inadequate. The Paula that you see today is not the Paula that I was as a child. I mean, while everybody else was figuring out what toy to play with, I was figuring out what family I was going to be with. And that wasn't always easy because sometimes it changed. I remember when I was going between both families, my mom, my biological mom, would be sick, but yet she'd miss me, so she'd want me back. And so the family from the church, Joe and Gloria, would take me back over because that's what she wanted. And then I would feel so bad for them and miss them and think about them. So then she would end up needing more help again. So I'd go back over here, and then I'd feel bad for her. And there was a lot of that. And those feelings of just feeling inadequate and I always felt like I was always disappointing somebody, no matter where I was. And those feelings can take over in our lives if we don't find a way to deal with it. And the only way that I know to deal with it is, again, to look to the Lord, to ask Him to give us the security that we need in our life, to give us the confidence, to help us when we feel insecure. Here's the thing, no one can make you feel that way without your permission. I love that quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. And it's true. It's true. We give that permission when we allow people and circumstances to change how we live and how we feel. So we have to face it. What insecurity is holding you back? I've learned if you face it, if you face your fear, you'll conquer it. But if you run from it, you'll increase it. I once was doing an album in Nashville, and I just remember being in the studio, and these guys that play, they're amazing. Like, they play on all the big names of people in Nashville, country and Christian. And here's little me down there, in the studio trying to sing along and do my little thing. And I had gotten a little overwhelmed with this one particular song that was just a little difficult. And I just remember taking a little break and going in the bathroom and just to catch my breath and refocus. And would you believe I looked on the wall and I saw this sign on the wall that said, "Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway." And I thought, you know what? It was a quote by John Wayne, and God can even use John Wayne to speak to our hearts, because in that moment, I felt like God had put that on the wall just for me. We're all scared to death sometimes. We're all overwhelmed sometimes, but you just can't stay there. You got to saddle up anyway and allow God to work through whatever situation it is, and God to do what he wants to do in and through your life, despite your fears, despite your insecurities. So he is sovereign. He is capable. He is in control. And when we start telling ourselves that, that's how we can get through situations. And we're going to talk more about that in this afternoon session. But another obstacle that we face is fear of failure. But I love Winston Churchill's view of failure. He says, "Success in life is going from one failure to another with undiminished enthusiasm." Wouldn't that be great if that's really how we looked at it? Like, gave ourselves permission to fail and mess up and just know, hey, we just pick ourselves up if it doesn't work out and try again. And we can see people all throughout history who have done that. I mean, here's some silly little examples, but Colonel Sanders had 1,000 rejections before he sold his first chicken recipe and had Kentucky Fried Chicken. Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections before he became president. And I personally like this. Thomas Edison, he attempted 5,000 times to invent the light bulb. What if he had stopped at 4,999? Think about how dark our world would be without light bulbs. But you know, failure is an event, not a person. It's important to realize it's not where you start in life, it's where you finish that matters. If you've messed up, if you've made mistakes, if you feel inadequate, insecure, let it go. You can rise above it with God's help. It's where you finish that matters. Just get up and continue the race. The last obstacle that I want to touch upon is our problems. And I know, ladies, we could camp out here all day because we all have them. I've shared with you what our last 5 years have been like. For those of you that weren't here last night, our families just had a lot. I got a phone call one day that my brother had been in a horrific car accident here and was in the emergency room at Eastern Maine and not expected to make it. That was a hard thing. That was devastating. Then, not even 2 years later, our brother-in-law wasn't feeling well and just thought something wasn't quite right, had a bad cough. We kept thinking it was bronchitis because that's what his doctor was saying. Come to find out, he had esophageal cancer, a very aggressive one, and ended up in less than a year passing away. Devastating to our family. My husband's sister is still just, lost without him. I mean, she has the Lord, so the Lord is getting her through. But the hole in her heart is there every single day when she wakes up. And then, of course, my mom passing away this summer. My dad, they were married for 71 years. So he has just had a really hard time learning how to live without her. And he just every day talks about her, thinks about her, misses her, wants to be with her. And life can be hard. So don't think for 1 minute I'm here just painting a story that, hey, we need to just be happy and we just need to, live God's dreams. And yes, we're supposed to live for Jesus, but sometimes it's hard. And like I said earlier, sometimes we can't breathe. It's just so much, so heavy. But no matter what we face, even when life is hard, God is good and God is there. And that's when we just need to cry out to him. Come to him and say, God, I can't do this. I need you. I love the book of Psalms. It's filled with so much encouragement. And there's so many times where when I'm going through something, in addition to my normal reading that I do each day, I'll just open it up and say, in Psalms, and just start reading and let it speak to my heart. I love Psalm 62:8. Trust in God at all times. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Do you need his refuge today? Do you need his strength with whatever you're facing? I want you to know that you are not alone, no matter what you're facing. And when you have nothing left, God will be there to pick you up, to hold you close. He loves us with an everlasting love. The God of the universe, who created the sun, the moon, the stars, is your Father, and he is your friend, and he knows every detail of your life. Nothing escapes him. So with whatever you are facing, let's just tell him this morning that we're desperate for him today. We need him. As I said before, without him we are lost, but with him we have everything. And ladies, I don't know what you're going through right now or what you've been through before you even came, but God does. And I'm going to do a song right now, and as I sing this, I just want you to close your eyes. And I want you just to, whatever it is, just bring it before the Lord today. Maybe tell him, God, I can't do this. God, I need you. I'm desperate for you, Lord. And allow him just to fill you, to cover you with his love, with his strength, with his comfort, and with his peace. Let's just look to him this morning. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. Would you stand and sing this with me? This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Sing that again. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Is he your daily bread? He longs to have that place. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken desperate for you. And I'm desperate for you. I'm lost without you. And I'm lost without you. We're lost without you. Let's really sing it out this last time. We're desperate for you, Jesus. And I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. This is the air I breathe. Lord Jesus, we just thank you that you are our everything. When we have nothing left to give, you are there. When we are hurting, you give us strength. You give us peace. You give us comfort. You give us what we need right when we need it the most. So God, I lift up each lady here. You know the needs in this room. And I just ask you, God, to meet them today. I pray that you'll strengthen each lady that came. Give them hope. Give them encouragement. And Lord, may you just continue to challenge us and speak to us and move us, God, so that we will rise above our problems and our circumstances and live out the dreams you have to make a difference in this world for you. We love you so much, Jesus. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for saving us, for choosing us. God, you're an awesome God. We don't deserve any of it, but we thank you. And Lord, may our lives show how much we love and appreciate it in such a way that we just want to share you with everyone that we meet. Lord, bless the rest of our time today. And we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, we're going to do some more door prizes real quick. And draw. And say who it is.
She likes telling me what to do. She's like, draw, Mom. Okay, Deidre Vadas. Oh, yay! How do I say your last name? Vadas. Okay, well, you get to pick something out. All right, now we have one more. I'm moving them all around, swirling them around. Oh, I'll put it back in. All right, Shirley Frost. Yay! Oops, there.
Okay, so the warning bell will be at 12:35, and the next session starts at 12:45. And right now we're dismissed for lunch.
Oh, wait! Don't.
What?
Why don't you say a prayer for the lunch?
Oh, okay. All right. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this day. Thank you so much for this weekend that we can just come here and worship you. And I pray that we'll just have a wonderful lunch and that the next session will just go super well. In your name I pray. Amen.